In a tremendous sign of things to come, in Europe, right-wing populist parties are winning bigly. Some say this shows that coming to the United States, a Donald Trump landslide victory, or a victory in general. But in Europe, right-wing populist parties are doing so well, it's actually throwing their governments into chaos. In Germany, the Conservative and the AfD, these are more right-leaning parties, have won bigly. And in France, Marine Le Pen, the right-wing populist, has won, forcing Macron to call snap elections and dissolving French parliament. Oh, boy. Who could have seen this coming? Well, news reports going back to last year and the year before show that the rising sentiment among right-wing populists, it's growing. The immigration crisis, the videos, the conflicts, the crimes. It is finally sending a wake-up call to your average indigenous European. You see what I did there? We got a funny tweet from this leftist media reporter who is shocked, I say, that right-wing populist parties are winning. He goes on to lament that the only country that's avoided this is Australia because they send all of their migrants to what he describes as a Guantanamo Bay-style island. Dude, when people seek asylum in Australia, they send you to an island detention center. My guy, I don't think that means what you think it means, but we'll talk about all that. This is big news that a lot of people are very excited about because, you know, before Donald Trump got elected the first time, Brexit won in the UK. Now, since then, Brexit has been smashed to bits by the Liberal government. They didn't actually give the people what they really wanted. Well, now in the United States, with Joe Biden's failures and this liberal economic order multicultural failure, it's looking like there will be a right-wing populist victory come November. But in the meantime, you can all just bask in the glory that is how the victories in Europe are shaping the European governments and what this could symbolize for you. Here's a story from the New York Post. Before we do get into that, head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member to support our work directly because we need your support. The work that we do is principally supported by our members, by you guys at timcast.com. If you're listening on Rumble, we love Rumble very much. We want to make sure we can stay on Rumble. We don't make the same sponsorship revenue on Rumble, so we ask that you become a member. And we will always prioritize keeping our content on the free speech platforms that allow us. And we just ask that you support our work if you'd be so inclined to do so. The New York Post says right-wing populists notch huge gains across EU and European Parliament elections, throwing governments into chaos. The right strikes back. The president of France was forced to call an emergency election as populist right-wing parties made stunning gains in elections held across Europe Sunday. President Emmanuel Macron announced he would dissolve his National Assembly and hold elections next month after he was humiliated by voters in the European Parliament election. The anti-immigration, anti-EU National Rally Party, led by Macron's arch-rival Marine Le Pen, is projected to get at least 31% of the votes, more than twice as many as the president's pro-European centrist party. Quote, the French people have sent a very clear message. They no longer want a technocratic, out-of-touch European construction which results in a loss of influence, identity, and freedom, Le Pen said. In Germany, the right-wing Alternative for Germany, AfD, took second place in the polls with 16.5% of the vote, despite being mired in controversies, even placing ahead of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's party. Olaf Scholz! I can't believe it. I have no idea who that is. Germany's left-of-center governing coalition parties are estimated to barely secure a combined 30% of votes. The Greens Environmental Party, the second biggest in Scholz's coalition, only secured 12% of the vote. My friends, I am no expert on German politics nor European politics. I know a little bit about the AfD. You've got the Sweden Democrats. You've got, I don't know if UKIP is still around. They're probably not. Nigel Farage is talking about making a big comeback, and a lot of people are excited to see it. I can just tell you this. I think the message is permeating, but I think more importantly, people are experiencing it. Man, there was this terrifying video. Guy walks out of his store, and there's a bunch of just illegal immigrants everywhere. And there's one video where it's going viral. A guy gets in some other guy's face, and he's screaming at him. The dude punches him. What is going on, man? And you know what really, really grinds my gears? These responses where people are like, our government doesn't care about us. You are conquered, okay? Your government. You are conquered. The people of your land do not enforce your cultural values. And I'm not talking about force. I'm talking about tolerance. Having a business where a guy walks in and you say, hey, we don't allow that stuff in here. Get out. You don't do it anymore. So what happens? Whatever anybody wants to happen. Because good men do nothing. Well, it's starting to change. And at the very least, through the system, which I can say, hey, better than nothing. The best outcome for all of us, be it in Europe, France, Germany, whatever it may be, is for strong men to simply make the demands. And what I mean is to say, we won't tolerate certain behaviors. We're no longer going to say, do whatever you want. You pushed the boundary too far. There's a limit. Alice Weidel, co-head of the AfD, touted her party's projected victories on Sunday, despite the negative headlines that have followed them, including the conviction of one of their leading politicians last month for closing out a campaign speech with the infamous Nazi slogan, everything for Germany. Are you kidding me? Man. Conviction, huh? What a horrifyingly disgusting place. But I gotta be honest, I've never been the biggest fan of Europe. You know, we can talk about the things that European colonists may have did that have been good, but the United States was a bit better. The one credit I can give to Europe is that you created the United States. That's what they did. And no, I think it's fair to say you were so bad that people fled and then came here and were like, we're going to do it way better. And they did. Now, certainly we are dealing with our problems here at home, but nonetheless, conviction. Ugh. Well, we are seeing this here in the United States. Teenagers being convicted for riding scooters on a pride mural they painted in the street. Absurd. But, you know, all that is required for evil to triumph is that good men do nothing. Well, we certainly have more and more better men that are rising up to the occasion, running for office, building influence. We've got people like Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Matt Gaetz, shout out. There's a lot more people to name. We've done well because people have become more anti-European, Weidel said on Sunday. People are annoyed by so much bureaucracy from Brussels. She added giving a plan ultimately to ban CO2 emitting cars, as an example. Before Sunday, the signs of a major shift were apparent. In the Netherlands, anti-immigrant populist Prime Minister Geert Wilders increased his seats in the EU Parliament from 1 to 7, though Liberal parties narrowly won the most votes. The nationalist victories signify a shift to the right for the European Parliament, which could fragment the EU. Good. This is a hard defeat for us today, said Kevin Kühnert, the head of Germany's Social Democrats, Chancellor Scholz's party. I got a little anecdote for you. It's a friend of mine, known for a long time. She is a lady who likes ladies. And she was hanging out with her lady friend, who is from the Netherlands. The Netherlands. And it's really interesting because, you know, the assumption is right away that a European lesbian is going to be woke, far left. No, far from it. Really, really amazing. This person seemed a lot more like you or I. And it brought me back to the days of yore when we were moderate, reasonable, and said, let people love each other, mind your own business. It was fascinating. Two big points that this woman brought up. From the American perspective, you know, my friend was very much more progressive. But this woman from the Netherlands said, immigrants are everywhere. It's crazy. I mean, you can't even run your business. They're filthy. They're homeless. There's drugs. Wow. That's not the Western progressive view. She then went on to say that the LGBT stuff, it's everywhere and people are tired of it. And I'm like, wow, this is coming from a lesbian woman. Yeah. There are many conservatives. I don't even think it's fair to call him conservative. It's funny they call Blair White a conservative. I'm like, guys, even Blair White says she's conservative. Blair White gets the Blair White gets the preferred pronoun privilege because Blair is cool and smart. but Blair, I don't think is a conservative. I think it's only this modern semantics where they try to claim anyone who opposes the cult is a conservative. Blair White is transgender. This is not conservatism. Conservatives don't like that stuff. But Blair supports America and borders and sound policy. Yeah, I mean, it's wild that we're at this point. But this is the thing I see about Europe, especially with the Netherlands. Meeting people from Europe, they are waking up. They're not far right. This woman that I met, she was not far right. She's chill, cool, normal person who just said, yeah, there's an immigration problem and they're jamming LGBT stuff everywhere. Those are facts. Whether you like it or don't is up to you, but they are doing these things and people are starting to get pissed off about it. They go on to say, the European Parliament elections represent the second largest democratic vote in the world, with some 450 citizens represented. Just 450, that's a very small number. Wow. They mean million, by the way, but it's a typo on their part. In Belgium, the Prime Minister Alexander De Croo announced he would resign after national elections in the nation. 11.5 million people saw their center-right party's vote share projected to drop to less than 5%. The right-wing anti-immigration Vlaams Belang party took second place in the election with 17.5% of the vote, while the right-wing nationalist New Flemish Alliance retained the largest share of votes. Sunday's results will result in complex negotiations in a country divided by language and deep regional identities. Belgium is split along linguistic lines, with Francophone Wallonia in the south and Dutch-speaking Flanders in the north. And governments are invariably formed by coalitions made of parties from both regions. The projections in Germany and France were expected to be repeated in other European Union countries, with Austria's right-wing Freedom Party coming out on top in the nation's polls over the weekend. The change in European Parliament's makeup could make it more difficult for the governing body to pass legislation and even paralyze the world's largest trading bloc, as conservatives may be more likely to take a nation-first focus, less concerned with the EU as a whole. Good! EU lawmakers who serve a 5-year term in the 720-seat parliament have a say in a wide variety of issues affecting the 27-member bloc, including financial rules, climate policies, and agricultural laws. It also approves the budget for the EU and is in charge of aid being delivered to Ukraine in its war against Russia. I am so excited to hear this because there is nothing I want more right now. I look up at the night sky, and I see a shooting star and I say, starlight, star bright, the first star I see tonight. I wish I might, that we will stop funding Ukraine and start funding our infrastructure here back home. This is driving people nuts. I guarantee you, you go to the average person, they're going to say, what? I say this, $200 billion to Ukraine. You walk up to anyone, conservative or otherwise, and say, what if we spent that money here? They'd say, deal. You know what's really annoying? For a lot of conservatives, we'd say, they don't want any spending from the government or taxes. They want lower taxes and smaller government. I think that's fair that most people would say that. Then if you go to a conservative and say, how about this? The $200 billion that went to Ukraine, we'll spend on infrastructure here in the United States. They'd agree to that. That's the big ask. Conservatives then finally going, okay, I guess we'll accept government spending. Well, there you go. But it's true. People would rather have the money spent here. I hope that this shift in the EU elections results in them saying, Ukraine, bye-bye. Not interested. It's funny because Ukraine's got this draft report listing a bunch of influencers and politicians and people who are blocking their financing from the United States. And I'm on the list. There's many more important people on the list, but I'm certainly there. It's fascinating that they're like, we don't, this Tim Pool guy, he's trying to stop us from getting money. It's my money, not yours, you grubbers. You're a mooch. You're a mooch, Ukraine. Stop mooching. Fight your own battles. I don't want to be involved. I hope what we get from the EU is negotiations with Russia. Peace. That'd be fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I give you this. We'll start here. Alex Armstrong's tweet before we get into the fun stuff. Right-wing victories today include Le Pen wins a thumping majority. Macron calls snap elections. Belgium prime minister resigns. Germany's Socialist Party scores worst ever EU performance behind AfD. Italy's Giorgia Meloni leads at 30%. Austria's Freedom Party at 27%. Coming soon, Trump landslide. Reform UK to win millions of votes. Nigel Farage elected to UK Parliament. We are so back. I bring you now to Tom Gara, writing things for Meta, formerly BuzzFeed News. Oof. Not going so well over there, buddy. He writes, it's very scary that in basically every Western democracy, immigration politics is powering a massive far-right surge, and nobody on the non-far right seems to have any idea how to deal with it. Cry more. And then he goes on to drop this hilarious bomb. Australia has almost completely skipped this trend, but I think they did it by taking immigration off the table politically via a bipartisan immigration agreement that involved sending asylum seekers to a Guantanamo-style offshore detention island, which is very grim. Ah! Dude, my guy. Australia has skipped the far-right surge because they send their migrants to Guantanamo Bay. Is not it doesn't mean what you think it means. So I do want to point out, a lot of people on the right are be like, that's not fair, Tim. It's not far right. Dude, the point is, people come to Australia like, I'd like asylum. Right this way to your detention center on a faraway island. And he's like, the far right is winning everywhere, except for the place where they've got sound immigration policy and don't let migrants in? Uh-huh. Oh, man. Oh, man. You know, me personally, I'm not a fan of island detention centers, so I don't think that's what we need to be doing. You got to send them back. You got to go home. You can't stay here. Or actually, I'll put it this way. You don't got to go home, but you can't stay here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, as the song goes, right? I think what we need in this country is, I don't know, like border security. Let me go back in time for you. Yeah, these libertarians, man. These libertarians. Let's go back in time. So before Ellis Island, people just showed up in the United States. And then the states would deal with immigration. But there were relatively few people. So, you know, what does it really matter, I guess? You couldn't vote unless you unless you owned property. So basically, somebody shows up and we're like, well, you don't live here. And if you were a problem, we'd kick you out because you don't live here. The states would basically handle immigration, be like, okay, we'll figure it out for you. But more people started to show up because the United States was expanding and it was particularly prosperous, especially after the Civil War. Things started getting a lot better. Industrialization and things like that were coming around. And so you get more and more immigrants who want to come. And then at a certain point, with more Europeans wanting to come to the United States because there's land, there's freedom. I mean, land is a big deal. Well, what happens then is the United States decides, look, we're getting way too many people coming in. Okay, we need a way to track them for disease and, you know, for dereliction. Like we don't want people who are destitute to come here, right? So we set up the Ellis Island model, which worked back then for a little bit. Okay, people would come on a boat, they'd go to Ellis Island. That's where you got to go. You can't, if you're in here somewhere else, we'll kick you out. And it was like a couple hours. You'd stand in line, they'd say, okay, who are you, where you from? Show me your documents. Doctor would check them for illnesses and say, all right, welcome to America. That was it. But eventually, the surge in mass migration became too much. And we are a nation that is now, coast to coast, there is no more empty land. We're full. So much so that we've got a climate change problem, they say. Well, we certainly don't want to expand that, do we? So that's when we shifted off the Ellis Island model and began to say, we're going to lock the borders down, standard security, and now you've got to apply because we don't have room for everybody. The dream is over. We have 330 million people here now. Well, now you got the libertarians who are like, we want to go back in time to the way it used to be. Yeah, you want to go back in time to when there was 50 million people? Sure, good luck. Go find the place. But everybody wants to come here, and there's not enough to go around. That's why we have border security. Where are we now? Video after video popping up in Europe, in the United States. Illegal immigrants, asylum seekers, they call them, taking over buildings, starting fights, committing crimes, hurting people. And some, I believe, are good people, keeping their heads down and just trying to live their lives. I respect that tremendously. What I don't respect is the illegal nature by which they enter the country. And Joe Biden is trying to legalize it. Crossing the U.S. border is a violation of our criminal code. In 2019, the Democrats were all asked on stage, would you change entering this country from the border from a criminal action, not through a port of entry, from a criminal action to a civil violation? And they all raised their hands because they are evil. But I'll make it easy for you. In Europe, you've got one last chance, my friends, one last chance. And I hope this message makes it to you. They say that, Le Pen won 31%. You know, it's funny. How much do you want to bet? 90% of those people are native French. Of the people who are voting against it, how much you want to bet they're not? Now, here's the question I have. Why are we allowing people who are not part of the community to influence the community? The end result is the destruction of France. What will make France French will be gone. Same thing for the United States. That's why I'm a big fan of immigration. Big fan. I say we should let every single person in the world come to the United States legally. And what do I mean by that? We have a legal process, a set number that we allow in. What you end up with is people who must integrate are given instructions on integration and assimilation and supporting American values. Too much is a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. My point is anyone can come here through a legal process. And that means 1 year it might be 100,000 people. 1 year might be 1 million. Depends on what we think makes sense to maintain the integrity of the U.S. Constitution and what constitutes the people. But you live in this world where you have unfettered illegal immigration. I tell you what you're going to get. Donald Trump's going to come in. He's going to start arresting all the criminal aliens, sending them back. It's not going to be good for anybody. It wasn't good for us in the first place. It's going to be expensive and difficult after the fact. But that's the true nature of these failed policies. Best of luck, our European friends. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.